Welcome to Bronx Now, where we will explore our ever-growing and developing borough, the rich culture, the innovative technology, and all things that make the Bronx a great place to do business. I'm your host, Joe Kelleher, and on this episode, we will explore the Westchester Square neighborhood. Joining me in the studio for a look at the neighborhood is the chairman of the Westchester Square Business Improvement District and general manager of Metro Optics Eyewear, John Bonizio. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Joe.
So John, tell us a little bit about your vision. I've known you for years, and I remember many years ago, you had this vision of doing something at the square. You wanted to make it great again.
Well, Westchester Square to me has always been a place that growing up in the Bronx was a great place to be. And it's changed a lot over the years, and it changed even more from its early conception back in the 1800s. Westchester Square was the original name of what is now called Owen Dolan Park. They called it Westchester Square. It was the village green, and that's where the local farmers used to bring their produce to sell to the people of Westchester, the village of Westchester, which is the area we now know as Westchester Square's Ariga community. And back in those days, most of the property was owned by Collis Huntington, who owned almost all the farms up in BronxNet. Mm-hmm. And he had a big mansion out on the Sound, which is now Preston High School. And right after the Civil War, he put together the Huntington Free Library and Reading Room. And it was done for so that the people that worked his farms could learn how to read and write without consideration to race, color, creed, or national origin. Mm-hmm. Now, if you think about that, right after the Civil War, it was a very progressive kind of attitude that he had. And I think that that's something that's ingrained in that community. Over the years, the commerce stayed, and businesses grew up around the park, which became known as Owen Dolan Park. It was named after a teacher who was in PS 12, which is the school right behind Westchester Square. And right after the Great War, they didn't call it World War I back then because there was no World War II. Right. But they had this, a lot of people from Westchester died in the Great War. So Collis Huntington was a real patriot, and he felt that, Owen Dolan was a great patriot, mm-hmm. and he felt that it was important that we remember the men who gave their lives for the country. So he had erected the great monument that's in Owen Dolan Park. And there were hundreds of thousands of people that came for the unveiling. And being the community leader that he was, Owen Dolan got up on stage and gave a rousing 25-minute speech, which put most people to sleep because it was so long. But he gave this great speech, and to thunderous applause, and he turned around and he went back to his chair, sat down, had a massive heart attack, and dropped dead right on the stage. Unbelievable. So they named the park after him, and that's why in the middle of the plaza in the park, you'll notice there's a big rock with a chair on top of it, and that's supposed to signify the chair that Owen Dolan pontificated from. Okay, and underneath it is a book, an open book, which symbolizes the library that once was there, which is now the rec center, and also the quest for higher education that went on in Westchester Square. So that's kind of the history, and then of course the Westchester village of Westchester was annexed by the city of New York and became part of the borough of the Bronx.
We were talking one day about there was a plaque somewhere where now White Castle is.
Oh, okay.
What was the story?
That goes even back further.
An interesting story.
Yeah, it is an interesting story. Actually, as Americans, we owe it to the people of Westchester Village for saving Washington's army. So back during the Revolution, the British Army had control of Manhattan and the lower Bronx, and they landed in Soundview, and they were marching up towards Westchester, and then they landed in Throgs Neck, which was a lot closer, and they started coming down, which is today would be East Tremont Avenue, and they were working their way in, and Washington's army was trapped. They also had troops up north towards Mount Vernon. So they were trapped. There was nowhere for Washington's army to go. So, and now with the British coming across Westchester Creek, which is where we now know the Hutchinson River Parkway and Lehman High School, they were coming. There was a bridge there, and they were coming over the bridge, or getting ready to come over the bridge, and the patriots from Westchester Village held them off with gunfire from the Westchester Square side and dismantled the bridge so they couldn't get over, which gave Washington's army the opportunity to escape north. They ended up having the Battle of Pelham. They retreated even further north, and then there was the Battle of Tarrytown, which is considered the turning point in the Revolution. So if it wasn't for the people of Westchester Square, okay, we probably wouldn't have the United States of America today, because Washington would have been defeated in the Bronx, like so many other people have.
An incredible story. So when you think about Westchester Square and the history of Westchester Square, and then here we are today, you know, and why is Westchester Square so important to this area of the Bronx?
Westchester Square is definitely the gateway. And if you look at a map, you'll see that where Westchester Square is located, there's kind of the other neighborhoods around it: Morris Park, Throgs Neck, Pelham Bay, Castle Hill, Parkchester. They all spoke out from Westchester Square.
You have done an amazing job in the square. I've known you for many years. I don't think that the square would even be close to where it is today. And then your recollection of history, it's amazing how you know so much about the square, and obviously you were born there, so you're vested in it, but it's priceless. And we want to thank you, John, for being here today, sharing your vision and the history of the square with us. We sat down with Bronx historian and president of the Huntington Free Library, who shares history of the area and how the footprints of the past have shaped the present and the future plans for Westchester Square. Join us as we go out to the library.